Welcome back to Real Talk NFT. I'm your host, Brian, and we have an amazing guest here for you today. It's the CEO, it's the co-founder of Irys. Irys is the first L1 programmable data chain. We're going to find out exactly what a data chain is, what Irys is building out there. We actually had Josh on a recording for a podcast, just a couple weeks ago, and we had some technical issues. But personally, when I started talking with Josh and learning more about Irys, I had to have him back on the podcast. Josh, really appreciate you jumping back on.
Likewise, sir. Wouldn't miss it for the world.
Well, I appreciate you as always. And to get things started, why don't we talk a little bit about just before we dive deep into Irys and what a data chain is and why it exists. I would love to know a little bit about your background and how you got into the crazy world of Web3.
It is crazy. I got into crypto about 4.5 years ago, and my background before then, pretty simply, was that I was studying computer science at the time in the UK. And it was just kind of pre-COVID, now going into COVID. And I was very bored and grinding on a lot of things grinding on a lot of new things. And crypto was one of the things I discovered pretty organically and ended up falling in love with the space, as most of the listeners probably have already. Discovered the data chain space towards the end of 2020. I've just been doing a bunch of research. So that's going to be Arweaves, the Filecoin, Storage, Sia, Chia, and ended up kind of falling pretty deeply in love with that side of the space, which also kind of tied to a lot of the open source work I was doing around contributing to database internals, basically the inside of databases, because there's a lot of kind of similar knowledge that is needed in both kind of blockchains and databases. So that's kind of where my initial interest came in before starting Irys.
All right. So 4.5 years, you've seen your fair share of crazy stuff happen in the world of Web3 and cryptocurrencies. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people get rugged. I've been rugged. I've lived it all. I've lived it all in the last 4.5 years for the better and for the worse.
I always make that joke with my co-host Joe. I was like, you haven't lived or you haven't really been in this space until you've been rugged or you sent funds somewhere where you shouldn't have. We preach wallet security nonstop, having different wallets. They're so easy to create and move assets around. But everyone always goes down a rabbit hole because it really feels like it is the wild, wild west. It's getting more sophisticated as a space every single day. And that's really where I want to talk about Irys. And let's just start off right at the beginning here. What is a data chain? Just give our audience like a kind of an understanding of exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so a data chain, the strict definition is it's a blockchain is optimized to store information, or it's a blockchain that's optimized for storage. So the core problem they solve is blockchains traditionally can only kind of handle a very low amount of compute, a very low amount of data, so they can only store, Ethereum in its entire lifetime has only stored, I think, a couple terabytes of data. And the question for data chains, or the problem they're trying to solve, is, okay, how do we actually enable not just kind of a couple terabytes over 5 years or 6 years to be stored? It's how do you enable kind of exabytes, or which is many orders of magnitude, many millions of terabytes, many billions of terabytes, etc. So large amounts of data.
Okay, so we're storing large amounts of data on chain, essentially, in one area. Kind of, where's that data being stored at, or where's the data layer?
Yeah, so when I talk about Irys as the first programmable data chain, just to kind of paint a clearer picture, we really have two layers. We have the bottom layer, which is the data layer, which is the ability to store any amount of information on chain, both temporary and permanent. And then we have the second layer, which is the execution layer, which is Irys VM, which enables you to do traditional DeFi tokens, but also enables you to interact with the data. So read the data, compute on it within the VM, right back to the data layer, etc. And to answer your question about where is this data stored, so the network is built on this decentralized validator set, same as majority of blockchains, and there's no limit. Anyone can spin one up. And the idea is that in order to be a miner, you need to, one, commit a bunch of hard drives or a bunch of storage to the network, and then two, you need to commit some stake, essentially, or some collateral to the network. And then you can participate in consensus. And the miners both run the kind of store the data and also kind of run the VM and run the execution of the chain.
Data on chain is really interesting. It's kind of like whenever you think of just like the provenance of data overall, like, I guess you're not like a truth blockchain, but you're storing data when somebody said something at what time, and that's just verified. But kind of, what's your macro view of just like provenance on data and storing data on chain? We're not writing like we used to write these history books. Who wrote it? What was true? Did they really say this? It's just a completely different time. I would love to know your take there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the original reason I got into the data chain space is I actually kind of loved this philosophical messaging behind them, which is that, okay, now you can store all of this information on chain. Well, you can actually now create this almost verifiable record of history for humanity more broadly, which is something that we've never had before because people don't think about it, but we have this actually very imperfect view of history. We, of course, have a better view over time as we kind of learn new things, but we're definitely never going to have a perfect understanding of history from before the 2000s. And the this is kind of one of the realizations that I had a kind of a year or so ago around that data chains are perfect for this kind of provenance use case, and it kind of maps broadly across society, I would say, actually. So let's talk about NFTs. The provenance behind NFTs is very important because you need to understand, okay, who created it, when it was created, etc. That very basic information. Same with all social media content is very much the same attribution content. When you look at an Instagram feed, you see, when it was posted, you see it was this many hours ago, etc. So provenance is actually everywhere around us. It's very much an attribute that's attached to all data that we kind of consume. And then it becomes even more important in the age of AI, right? So we are now seeing deepfake technology and generally just AI generated content being pretty insane. Like every single few months, you see kind of an improvement, and it's getting to the point where even people who are kind of privy to AI are struggling to say, kind of, is this actually AI generated or not? And the only solution to this problem is provenance. It's about saying, okay, how can we make sure that we get that every bit of data has verifiable attributes about who created it, when it was created, etc. And really what that's going to tell the user is, okay, was this created by a kind of real human being, you or me, or was it created by some kind of AI agent, some kind of bot or AI model?
Since we first talked, a week or two ago, and we couldn't release the podcast because we had a whole bunch of audio issues. Hopefully it's all good here now. But I feel like over a week or two, the world of AI has in crypto has exploded all of a sudden. We have this GOAT meme token that was recommended by Truth Terminal. We now have what was it? Flavia, who's an AI agent, and now it has a meme token out there. And I was just talking to Joe about this recently, is how the world of crypto and AI seem to be just like they've always been integrated in some form or fashion, but just over the past couple of weeks, I feel like they've had this collision course. And it makes a lot of sense because AI is obviously going to flow very nicely with like crypto compared to other currencies out there, like fiat, for the digital aspects and everything along those lines. But I just wanted to make a call out because I feel just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about AI and now it's absolutely exploded. If you type in like AI agent into Twitter, you get some crazy stuff right now. And 2 weeks ago, it wasn't as prevalent.
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting trends which you kind of pointed at was that if you look at AI crypto about a year ago, and even now today, all of the tokens and all of the projects focused on it was more about how do we make crypto support AI and solve a lot of the problems that AI has. And to be honest, the adoption for a lot of those AI projects is like not impressive. Some are great, some are just kind of okay. And the funny thing is now kind of flipping that around with AI kind of helping crypto, or at least AI contributing into crypto, has created this kind of, I think, Go hit 5 million at its peak, right? Within a few weeks. So it's really interesting to see that flip of kind of AI helping crypto versus crypto helping AI, and how the value differs.
Yeah, that's why we love this space, because literally anything could happen. There's a lot of smart people out there, a lot of impressive builders and developers, and kind of rolling into that. Give me an idea. Why is Irys so great for a developer to build on your L1 compared to possibly other L1s or L2s out there?
Yeah, so what I kind of say to people is that we are an L1 that doesn't, we're not kind of competing on the DeFi level. So we're definitely not trying to compete with the world of kind of Verachain and Monad, etc., where a lot of their focus is on DeFi with kind of Verachain's proof of liquidity mechanism. It's definitely not our warehouse. Our focus is how can we build an ecosystem that revolves more heavily around data. And when I kind of zoom out and I talk about the vision for Irys, it's very much about how do we bring more web services on chain? And it's not about, and we actually really frame that as like crypto has been very indexed in these financial rails, but the web is mostly building these data infrastructure rails. So how do we essentially bring those non-financial web services on chain? How do we allow them to have those kind of incredible on-chain properties? And those are the kind of protocols and applications that we're very focused on. So that maps kind of less to things like DeFi and more to, okay, how do we have large amounts of data stored on chain on Irys? And how do we have a bunch of these kind of services or protocols or projects connected to it, whether it's people doing kind of AI, kind of edge compute, aggregating GPUs, deep-in protocols, these a little bit more data-centric use cases where they're dumping a lot of data on chain and they want to kind of perhaps define monetization rules based off of that or do computation on that data, etc. And we're essentially creating this ecosystem where data is this kind of liquid asset that can flow between applications.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And you're just making it easier and more efficient, and I'd imagine cheaper at the end of the day. Why'd you go with an L1 versus an L2? Is it because an L1 you could just be a little bit more decentralized than an L2? Curious about that thought process.
Yeah, so I mean, I remember I quote tweeted someone about this recently about how everyone should just be launching L2s, but the reason we chose an L1 is very deliberate. It's because L2s are, I guess the better way to frame this is that data chains should be highly censorship resistant, because the core reason that you're a data chain is because you want to have this redundancy where a bunch of kind of anonymous or perhaps randomly geo-distributed miners are storing data and there's strong economic guarantees around. The issue with twos is that we've really seen the decentralization of any sequences yet. There may be one or two, but even now it's still permissioned, where it's okay, I elect 10 people or a few people, I think it's 10, to run servers. And we really wanted that kind of that strong censorship resistance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right, you're building a data chain. It should be on an L1, more decentralized. Makes tons of sense there to me. I'm curious about some of the applications Irys has been involved in. I know I remember maybe it was a podcast or something I read, or maybe we talked about in our last podcast, was that you were heavily involved in Solana NFTs in 2021. I would love to know a little bit about that.
Yeah, so to give a little bit more background of where Irys began, so we started, the L1 was only announced 2 months ago, but the Irys started 3.5 years ago now, April time 2021. And the main point, we actually started in the Arweave ecosystem, which is the permanent data chain. And the problem back then that we were trying to solve was, okay, how do we scale Arweave? Because we fundamentally kind of believed in this idea of permanent data, but Arweave just didn't scale at the time. And what started to see, and we launched that, by the way, in August time 2021. But what we started to see was, okay, well, these Solana kind of NFT minters essentially want to store their NFTs in a permanent way. Arweave at the time was the only way to do it. And we launched kind of at August, if you remember, kind of July, August time in 2021, that was really on the kind of mid part of the exponential curve for Solana NFTs. And I remember we essentially launched and went to 100,000 transactions a day within about a month, because we were doing a majority of Solana's NFTs, because we on day one were working with Metaplex, which I think at the time was actually still part of Solana Labs. And long story short, we did about 90 at one point during that market. We were doing about 92% of the NFTs on Solana. So we were kind of deeply engrossed in that side of the Solana ecosystem, at least from an infrastructure standpoint. So I definitely won't say that I was like deep in the NFT space. I bought about 6 NFTs that were not good financial investments, but they looked cool. So that and that's what matters. But I was definitely I had a view of a majority of the NFT space within Solana during that time because I was working so heavily with all of the protocols to make sure that they can store their data.
Yeah, and obviously we talk a lot about NFTs on our show and just how unique they are with with being able to own with ownership and future utility, but those like end of the days of that NFT initial bull run were ridiculous. I think everybody kind of saw the writing on the wall. We just didn't know when the music was going to stop. With every new mint we would mint, if it was $10, $1,000, whatever it was, it would 2-3x immediately, and that wasn't really an ecosystem that was going to thrive long term. Now, obviously, I'm a big believer in NFTs and the utility and the value of ownership they bring, but that space needs to become more sophisticated and grow along with everything else in Web3. It's kind of how I look at the meme coin space right now. Like every meme coin that launches right now, or if it's an AI agent launches it, it's 5-10xing overnight and it creates a tremendous amount of FOMO for people. And we try to talk with people in our private community about how you don't get caught up in those things. You need to look at the underlying technology and benefit. But just kind of calling out how crazy of a time it's been. And I do think the meme coin space is kind of following a similar trajectory of that that NFT space. But everything's going to kind of shake out. The dust is going to settle. And hopefully we're left with like a lot of cool, fun, well-working, effective products for everybody out there.
Yeah, definitely. And
Go ahead. Sorry
I was just going to say, I was just going to say, I agree. And the meme coin is definitely a little bit different. I think the difference with the meme coins now is it's a little bit more of a cabal game. It's about more, there's people say there's no insider kind of ownership, etc., which is like broadly true. But these coins are mostly pushed by a cabal of individuals, which I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's very different to NFTs, I think, where it was just different mechanics. I am interested to see if any, I don't know if anyone's done this, but any meme coin communities have create NFTs that tie to the token in some way. I feel like there's some kind of interesting idea that could be a combination between a meme coin token and also meme coin NFTs. But that's kind of a raw idea with no with no conclusion.
No, we're on the same page, Josh. There's a handful of, or probably more than a handful of NFT projects or meme coin projects that have some sort of interchangeability. Some are like 404 tokens, where you have the NFT, but it's connected to a meme coin. So you have almost instant liquidity at all times to move out of that NFT, and maybe you redeem one NFT for 10,000 of this token, or vice versa. You have 10,000 of the token, you can get an NFT. There's a lot of other ways people are utilizing it, but it does feel like there's a crash course here where meme coins and NFTs can kind of make a baby and make a really cool product for people out there. But right now, you're right. It's a cabal game. There's a handful of meme coins out there I think that can do very well financially for people and tell a good story. But at the end of the day, it's a meme coin. It doesn't have a lot of utility except really the hype and the dog with hat picture that goes around with it. There's not much more. But I personally didn't see it coming. I was highly critical of like Dogecoin years and years ago. I traded it, not gonna lie, but I was highly critical of it. I was like, they're producing X amount every day. This has no utility. But now it's, like a $18 billion market cap. I was like, never saw that coming. Kind of back to what you're doing at Irys, because I definitely want to make sure that we talk all about it, because you're doing some cool stuff. Really curious about any like real-time partnerships you're working with. I know I've seen on your Twitter page, and I'm a big fan of these NFTs, of the Berachain and their dynamic NFTs. Love to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about some partnerships you've been working with.
Yeah, so we kind of we have two broad initiatives. One is kind of building our native ecosystem, which you'll start to see a little bit more because we're very focused on like how do we build this ecosystem around data, etc. And then a lot of our other initiatives is how do we actually support these other kind of ecosystems, L1s, L2s, etc. And Berachain is a good example of people who don't have context. We essentially partnered with Berachain and a lot of their ecosystem as well to help with storing their data, essentially. So we have some projects within Berachain that's doing a questing platform. So the Honey Jar is working on something like that. We have Yeet is a project that we've also worked with as well. And our focus is Berachain provides this really awesome DeFi liquidity, DeFi primitive proof of liquidity. But how do we support the application with other parts of the stack, which are perhaps less DeFi focused? That's kind of the core idea, and we're doing that with some other L1/L2s. I probably won't share which ones yet, but that's kind of give you an idea of some of the stuff that's coming up soon. So we'll announce those kind of things definitely in the next couple of months.
Excellent. Love to hear it. With you being, I guess this could be a couple part question here, is that with you being an L1, I'd imagine there's going to be some connection with a token. In addition to that, I cannot forget about this before we wrap up the podcast, because it was one of my favorite things about Irys is your mascot Sprite, because I've seen them kind of floating around Twitter everywhere in your community. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, I love it. I enjoy learning about, the technical aspect in the Web3, but when you have a kind of a cute little mascot that's kind of floating around, it looks like your community has really become heavily involved, like creating content around Sprite. Would love for you to kind of like touch base on the origin there and how successful it's been. I'm assuming it's been successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty successful. And to tell the story of perhaps why we did that, it really comes down to one. I'm going to give a shout out to our CMO, who is amazing and leads all of this stuff. But I learn a lot from him. And the main thing that is really important for us as a brand is we need to have this great tech and have this great ecosystem, etc. But also, people don't realize that brand is really just about emotion and feeling. And if you do not, it doesn't matter if Irys was making billions of dollars, or if we have the biggest ecosystem ever. If our brand makes you feel horrible, no one wants to do anything. And that's kind of the core kind of idea behind the mascot, is that we're setting a certain feeling, we're attracting a certain set of people, etc. And that's kind of, and just to kind of put it into words, it's about saying, okay, Irys is, we are smart people. We're not total idiots, but we also want to make this like a fun place as well, where as a team, we're fun. As an ecosystem, it's a fun place. And then obviously for our community members as well, it's a fun place. And the mascot is just a representation of all those values that kind of lie within our culture.
Yeah, whoever your CMO, whoever kind of created it, it was one of the first things that like kind of attracted me to it. I was like, I love this little guy. I kept seeing him pop up more and more on my timeline. I was like, this is a lot of fun. I really love what you're building here at Irys. It makes a ton of sense. Just the path you're taking in making it a data chain and utilizing the properties there. Would love to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about the future of Irys and, give a call out for anybody to be able to find more information about Irys and learn more about you.
Yeah. So to talk a little bit about what is coming up for Irys, all roads kind of lead towards how can we get to mainnet and have kind of a strong ecosystem. So the next two milestones will be public testnet and then mainnet. And the goal with public testnet is, okay, we have a bunch of builders building on our alpha testnet. How do we create this permissionless place, our testnet, that anyone can go and build applications? And then mainnet is, okay, how do we take this to production, so to speak, and everything that comes with it? So those are really the big things. And then between that, we've obviously got a bunch of partnerships that we're going to be announcing, and I'm going to be trying to educate people a little bit more about what Irys is, why it's cool, and why I think it's cool. And so if you want to get building, or now is kind of the time to really build. I think to get early in an ecosystem is where the real opportunities lie. And so if there are any developers listening or engineers listening, or just people who have a cool idea, then please do reach out, and then we can see how we can support, find people to build it out for you, etc. What they need. And then if you want to find more about Irys, then tons of places you can go, but irys.xyz has all our links. Or you go to our Twitter, which is Irys_XYZ, docs.irys.xyz, etc., etc. those are all the places. And you can obviously DM me. I'm terminally online, so as long as I'm awake, I will most likely respond within 60 seconds. It's pretty standard for me.
I love that. I love that. The sense of urgency out there. And for everybody in the audience, I'm going to link all the websites, all the docs. There's just great information about Irys, what they're building, why you should be involved below the podcast. Josh, you're the best. Really appreciate you jumping on for take 2. Again, it's always great to have you. Thank you again.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.